Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following.
Former Alberta Jobs Minister Doug Schweitzer made it official and walked away as Calgary MLA this week. We have the details. Another Alberta emergency department will be temporarily shutting down due to a lack of doctors. We will tell you where. And we hear from a Canadian Christian organization which has been helping to save babies' lives in Kenya for a number of years.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Doug Schweitzer has officially left the UCP and is no longer an MLA for the Calgary Elbow riding. He made his resignation official this week. The former cabinet minister announced earlier this year that he would not seek re-election. He left his role as Jobs, Economy and Innovation Minister earlier this month. Schweitzer did not give a specific reason for his early resignation. The next provincial election is slated for the spring of 2023. Now, there's no word yet if a by-election will be held to replace Schweitzer before the next election. Premier Jason Kenney said the decision on whether a by-election would take place could be with the next UCP leader. The party will choose its new premier on October the 6th. The race to replace Premier Kenney is heating up. To date, we've had the opportunity to chat one-on-one with UCP leadership hopefuls Daniel Smith, Brian Jean, Travis Taves, Rebecca Schultz, and Todd Loewen. Now, in our chat with MLA Loewen, he shared his thoughts on the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which Daniel Smith has been strongly campaigning on.
The Sovereignty Act is basically saying no when Ottawa is infringing on our rights as Albertans. And so I agree that we need to be able to say no, but I would rather focus on working towards the things that we know we can do. We can look towards Quebec and see the things that they have already done, and we can work towards those things ourselves. Again, pension plan, employment insurance, collecting our own provincial taxes, provincial police force, all those things that we can do without having a constitutional crisis, without having a fight with Ottawa.
Catch the full interview with UCP leadership hopeful Todd Loewen and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our program. The federal Conservatives will be choosing their new leader on September the 10th. Is Pierre Poilievre still the front-runner? Will Jean Charest surprise some card-carrying party members? Jeffrey Hale is a retired political science professor from the University of Lethbridge. He says Pierre Poilievre seems poised to win. He says Poilievre's team has been well prepared for this moment for quite some time.
Mr. Poilievre has a very strong organization across the country. He has been able to sell a lot of memberships, raise a lot of money. The turnout is roughly in the area between 50 and 60% that might be expected with so many new memberships being cast, and the race not seen to be terribly close. So it's hard to say whether he will win on the first ballot or whether, due to the preferential vote system, the second choices of people like Roman Baber or Leslyn Lewis will put him over the top. But I haven't seen any huge groundswell that would suggest the likelihood of any other outcome.
Jeffrey Hale will have more on the CPC leadership coming up on the BCN Weekend Show with Jeanette Rocher. A Medicine Hat police officer has been found guilty of assault after he attacked a youth when someone knocked on his door and ran away. Constable Miles Steiger, a 12-year veteran, was convicted for the assault that took place near his home. He received an 18-month suspended sentence. The police service says Steiger was at home on the night of April 18th when a young person knocked on his door and then took off. Police say the off-duty police officer gave chase and encountered another young person who was not the culprit and assaulted that individual. 6 new recruits walked the graduation stage earlier today to officially be sworn into the Lethbridge Police Service. One new officer will also be joining the Blood Tribe Police Service. Dignitaries from our city made their way to Lethbridge College to take part in the graduation ceremony. Video journalist Micah Quinn has the details.
6 new constables for the Lethbridge Police Service and 1 for the Blood Tribe Police Service were led in by bagpipes and drums as they marched into a new career as police officers. Acting Sergeant Shane Kissinger with the Lethbridge Police Service says the application process was a lengthy one.
It involves a lot of different steps in interviews and polygraph and psych tests. So when they go through all that and they're finally selected and they hit the academy, they go through 22 weeks of very formalized training that is conducted by and ran by the college, and each one of the partnerships facilitates it. So this year, we facilitated the Lethbridge Police.
Local dignitaries also made the trip for the ceremony, including the Alberta Justice Minister and Solicitor General Tyler Shandro, Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas, Lethbridge East MLA Nathan Newdorf, and Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Hagan. Kirsten Barwagon is joining the Blood Tribe Police Service as a new constable, and she says she's proud to join a police force that consists of female officers making up a third of the force.
It's going to be very cool to work with some incredible females as well, and just to learn experience from them and how they do it.
Kai Striegel, a constable with the Lethbridge Police Service, graduated at the top of his class and was the recipient of the Top Cadet Award.
I feel very honored. To be honest, it's been really good, but it's been a great group of cadets. The 7 of us have been working so well together, and it's gone so smoothly.
The Lethbridge police officers have an additional 3 weeks of in-house training and 18 weeks of field training ahead of them before they're ready to hit the streets. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Well, it was another scorcher here in Lethbridge today. Lots of sunshine and hot temperatures across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is in now with an early peek of the forecast. Jeanette, the heat wave should remain for the entire Labor Day long weekend?
Yeah, this last long weekend of the summer, definitely feeling more like the middle of summer with these heat warnings in effect. How daytime highs 30 to 35 degrees combined with overnight lows in the low to mid-teens. Speaking of which, this evening an overnight low of 13 degrees. That's still pretty warm. Into Saturday, look at that high of 35 degrees. Not quite a record breaker, but high indeed. What a way to start off this long weekend. I will have a 7-day forecast coming up for you later on in the show.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. Another Alberta Emergency Department will be temporarily closing its doors due to a lack of doctors. Alberta Health Services announced that the Bassano Health Centre's emergency department will be closed over the long weekend. The shortage also forces the temporary consolidation of Bassano Health Centre's 4 acute care beds to the Brooks Health Centre, which is 51 kilometers away. Earlier this summer, Airdrie was forced to close its emergency department due to a shortage of physicians. The Fort Saskatchewan Community Hospital also closed its obstetrics unit for the second time in less than a month due to a lack of specialists. There's a new piece of equipment at Chinook Regional Hospital. It can give the exact amount of nutrition to critically ill patients who are on feeding tubes or attached to an IV. It's called the indirect calorimeter. And registered dietitian Lauren Tweel explains how it works.
An indirect calorimeter is basically the gold standard for determining a patient's energy requirements. And it does this by measuring a patient's CO2 production and oxygen consumption as they breathe in and out. This allows us to accurately determine a patient's energy requirements so that we can optimize the nutrition support plans that we give our patients. And it helps to minimize underfeeding and overfeeding. By using an indirect calorimeter, it allows the dietitians a non-invasive approach to tailoring our nutrition care plans for our patients with unique needs and accuracy, and it helps to optimize recovery.
The indirect calorimeter was donated by the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation and costs about $35,000. The Alberta government announced the completion of 11 schools creating state-of-the-art learning spaces for more than 7,100 students. There was more than $276 million invested into the new schools, which are located in many areas of the province, including Brooks, Calgary, Cochrane, Edmonton, and Grand Prairie. Government officials say an additional 48 school projects continue, with 5 of them expected to be completed by the end of the year. Students at the University of Lethbridge will be back to class next week following a unique 2-year learning experience due to the pandemic. Now, some faculty say student health and well-being is at the forefront of their concerns. An associate professor with the university, Dawn McBride, says anxiety is one of their top concerns.
Anxiety seems really high. So anxiety about connecting with people, anxiety about wellness, anxiety about coming onto campus when they haven't been here for a couple of years, anxiety about their level of competence. Can they still learn? And then just accessing professors again and their peers. That's the big challenge. And I would add, not only are we sending messages that there is help and resources available, but we're also leaning into connection. And what that means is we're saying, welcome back. We are so glad you're here. We've got a chance to reconnect. And how are we going to do it this year?
Students will be returning to class on September the 6th. If you take a cruise down Parkside Drive by Henderson Lake in Lethbridge, you may see a new name in the future. The Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommended that Lethbridge City Council name the current area Exhibition Way. It would be to honor the Lethbridge and District Exhibition. The area is located adjacent to the new agri-food hub and trade center that's set to open in 2023. It is expected to generate more than $90 million for the local economy each and every year. Mike Workington, the CEO of the Lethbridge and District Exhibition, says the renaming would be vital to maintaining the legacy of the site.
It goes back over 100 years to when this site was developed for the World Dry Farming Congress in 1912. The exhibition not only has played an important role here on Parkside Drive, but also in the community and in the region as a whole. And so cementing that legacy through a landmark like naming the street after us is, we couldn't be more honored to be part of that. And quite frankly, we hope it goes forward.
The cost for the sign change would be around $2,000. The Labor Day long weekend is almost here. Now, the City of Lethbridge says this will be the final weekend to enjoy the hot weather at our city's spray parks and outdoor pools. Officials say the summertime facilities will close on Tuesday, September the 6th, with the exception of the Legacy Spray Park, which will remain open until September the 12th. Holiday hours will be applied to Henderson Pool on Labor Day Monday, which are 1 till 7 p.m. New research says exercise is key in living a long and healthy life as you enter the golden years. 95-year-old Richard Soller is one who is staying active and being healthy late in his life. As we hear this next story, he's leading by example.
These athletes are still at it, swimming, running, vaulting, and playing the sports that help keep them vital late in life. 95-year-old Richard Soller is one of 12,000 competitors here at the 2022 National Senior Games.
Go, Dad, go!
You don't have to win every race. The main thing in, I think, growing older is to keep moving. Do something with your body and your mind.
Soller was nearly 50 when he got serious about running.
I've mostly concentrated on the sprints. I can still long jump. I call it the short jump now.
He's since won 1,500 medals and awards, but his most sought-after achievement, good health well into the golden years.
I've always thought that exercise is the best medicine there ever was invented.
He has the right idea. Research shows that staying active helps on a cellular level. But there's still a lot scientists don't know about the biology of aging. In the 1960s, Leonard Hayflick made a discovery that challenged the widely accepted notion that normal cells could replicate endlessly.
Prior to my work being accepted, it was ridiculed for about a decade. And it also gave rise to a completely different view about aging. After about 50 population doublings of the original cells, I noticed that the cells stopped dividing.
At that point, they become zombie-like, damaged but not dead. Researchers say the immune system removes most of these so-called senescent cells, but the ones that stick around can be harmful. As we get older, these cells pile up and become more difficult to clear out. That accumulation of zombie cells can harm other cells nearby, like pieces of moldy fruit in a bowl. Mounting evidence links the buildups to several age-related conditions. Researchers are testing drugs that could delay those disorders by selectively eliminating senescent cells. But we already know that exercise keeps people healthy.
I think some people look at it as, why is your dad still doing this? Well, why not? This has been his life for a long time, especially after retirement. And if he can do it, he will continue to do it.
I think you can have a healthy lifespan right up until the very end.
95 years young. Wow, what an incredible story. There's a Canadian Christian organization which has been helping to save babies' lives in Africa for a number of years. Home of Hope has been doing its part to protect the most vulnerable, especially in areas like Nairobi, Kenya. Brian Thompson is with the group, and he says in the past, people in Nairobi would simply throw out their babies at the local dump if they were deformed, thinking the child was cursed.
While we were there, we started Home of Hope project in Kenya. And on the news one night, they were talking about how babies were thrown away live in plastic bags into the city dump. Nairobi has a 30-acre dump in the middle of the city. And people, because of rape and incest or extreme poverty, they just throw their baby away. And that just, broke our heart. And we put up 3 big billboards that says, please don't throw away your babies. Call this number.
Catch the powerful interview with Brian Thompson from Home of Hope, who will also discuss his book, Meant for More, that's coming up later in our program. The family of a man who died in custody last week after Vancouver police used a beanbag shotgun is calling for a public inquiry and changes in how the department treats people in the downtown east side.
I believe that given the location of this incident in the downtown east side of Vancouver, that my cousin Chris was seen as just another vulnerable person in a vulnerable part of the city, and that no one would care about him if something bad happened to him. Unfortunately, for the Vancouver Police Department, Christopher has a family that loves him very much, and we are exploring every possible avenue to seek answers for him and his children. Our family is beyond anger right now. Anger is an emotion that quickly came and left, just like Chris. We now just we want reasoning, we want understanding, we want answers, we want to know. We have so many questions that have not been answered, and if we are angry, it's because we haven't been contacted by the IIO or the Vancouver Police Department from anybody to at least provide an update as to where this investigation is at or what's taking place.
Manitoba's premier is promising to twin the Trans-Canada Highway between Manitoba and Ontario. In a letter to the family of the victims of a deadly crash, Heather Stephenson says the province will award contracts to engineers for design studies for the first phase of the project. Stephenson says the government is committed to getting the job done. The letter was in response to Peter Lugley, who has been advocating for the twinning since his brother Mark and nephew Jacob died in a horrific crash back in 2019. A lot of Western Canada has dealt with heat waves this summer. You can include Saskatchewan, which has been dealing with a number of heat warnings across the province. Meteorological summer may have ended on Wednesday, but the province is not done with the heat. Heat warnings blanket a number of communities in the south, central east, and far northeast regions of the province. Regina set a record yesterday, reaching 35.6 degrees. The old mark was 35 degrees set back in 1929. Environment Canada says that 30-plus degree temperatures will return for the long weekend. Well, the heat warning from Environment Canada also continued for Lethbridge today. A smoking hot weekend is shaping up as well, where we may be setting another record too. Full weather details are coming up. The hot weather continues for much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. The meteorological summer ended on Wednesday, but Jeanette, you wouldn't know it, as we may hit, mid-30s again this weekend?
Oh yeah, Hal, it's still summertime as far as I'm concerned. Autumn solstice doesn't even begin until later on in September, and as far as I'm concerned, until Labor Day, it's still summer. I was still out there rocking my white pants today, so I'm gonna still continue wearing white over the long weekend. I don't know about you. But yeah, these daytime highs definitely in the low to mid 30s, including Saturday, high 35, 32 Sunday, Monday, and as well 32, down to 28 though on a Tuesday. Wednesday, same thing, high of 28. Now there's going to be a low pressure system moving in Wednesday evening, bringing a 60% chance of showers. Overnight low at 11 degrees. Into Thursday, 60% chance of showers as well. Look at that temperature drop down to 16 degrees. So there you go. Looks like fall is going to actually start next week. Average high for this time of year, 23 degrees. Average low, 8 degrees. 35. That was our high temperature back in 1998. And in 1999, 1 year later, we had the chilliest, which was was only 0. So what a fluctuation there. 6:48, that's when the sun rose this morning, sunset this evening at 8:14 p.m., giving us just under 13 and a half hours of daylight. I know I really noticed it in the morning now when my alarm is going off. It's still dark out, whereas it used to be light for, very, very early. 22 the high tomorrow in Victoria, 23 in Vancouver tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. Edmonton and Calgary both sitting under a heat warning still, which will continue for much of the weekend. 33 the high in Edmonton tomorrow, 32 in Calgary under sunny skies. Prairie still very warm as well. 34 degrees the high tomorrow in Saskatoon. Regina actually hit a record yesterday at 35.5 degrees. Sunshine tomorrow, 31 degrees there. That heat is not letting up anytime soon. 24 the high tomorrow in Winnipeg. Now in central part of the country, Toronto looking at a chance of thunderstorms in the afternoon with a 30% chance of showers, high of 30 degrees. 29 the high in Ottawa tomorrow under sunny skies, and sunshine in Montreal with a high of 30. As we look to the east coast of Fredericton, seeing some fog dissipating in the morning, but mainly sunny skies. 25 the high. Same thing for Halifax, 25 the high there. Charlottetown sitting at 23 with sunshine, a bit of fog in the morning, and 20 degrees the high in St. John's, Newfoundland under sunny skies. There you go. That is the start to your long weekend. Make it a good one.
Finance ministers from the G7, including Canada, have pledged to impose a cap on the price of Russian oil. The move is aimed at limiting the Kremlin's revenues and ability to fund its war in Ukraine. Experts say it will also curtail the war's impact on global energy prices and inflation. The ministers say insurance or shipping companies would be barred from helping Russia set oil at prices above the set limit. The move, announced in a statement issued by Germany, did not provide a potential price cap or specify when the G7 aims to finalize the plan. Sun Life Financial is purchasing a 51% stake in U.S.-based Advisors Asset Management in a deal worth $214 million U.S. It will include a call option for Sun Life to acquire the remaining 49% of AAM starting in 2028. Sun Life is also committing to invest up to $400 million to launch SLC management alternative products for the U.S. retail market. They will be distributed by AAM, which has 10 offices across 8 states and provides a range of services and products to financial advisors. The Real Estate Board in Vancouver says overall home sales last month plunged 40% from a year earlier amid a quieter summer season. The board says the composite benchmark price, however, fell 7% from August of last year, while sales were unchanged from July. The board says prices edged down over the past 4 months due to a shift in market conditions attributed to inflationary pressures and higher interest rates. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 128 points on the day to finish at 19,270. The Dow was down 337 points to 31,318. The S&P 500 was down 42 points to 3924, and the Nasdaq was down 154 on the day to 11,630. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 26 cents to 86.87 U.S. per barrel. Natural gas was down 48 cents to 8.79 U.S. Gold was up 14.67 to 17.12.19 U.S. an ounce, and silver was up 23 cents to 18.04 U.S. an ounce. Feed wheat is at $11.02 per bushel, barley's at $8.16, canola's at $18.61, and corn is at $11.63 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.75 to $144.55. Feeder cattle October contract was up 60 cents to $184.95, and lean hogs October contract was down $1.93 to $90.03. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 76.14 U.S.
Recapping one of our top stories, as students head back to school this fall, the province announced the completion of 11 schools, creating state-of-the-art learning spaces for more than 7,100 students. Officials say there was more than $276 million invested into the new schools that are located in areas including Brooks, Calgary, Cochrane, Edmonton, and Grand Prairie. Coming up, a very powerful interview with a spokesperson from the Christian group Home of Hope, who describes how they've rescued countless babies who were thrown into a dump in Nairobi, Kenya. Pastor Brian Thompson will have details shortly. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Discover homegrown produce and homemade products at the Downtown Farmers Market at Festival Square in Lethbridge. Every Wednesday beginning at 9 a.m. until September 4th, you'll find over 15 local vendors selling fresh fruit and vegetables, delicious baked goods, homemade soaps, and so much more. Enjoy the relaxing atmosphere and support local producers and artisans at the same time. Go back in time and see what it was like to live as a pioneer. Coyote Flats Pioneer Village is a Western heritage museum located 1.5 kilometers south of Pitcher Butte. Walk through the village and see a railway station, post office, fire hall, school, and so much more. The museum is open daily from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. with admission of $10 for adults or $20 per family. For more information, visit coyoteflats.org. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
Christians have been helping people for many years in many different nations. As you see during many of our broadcasts here on Miracle Channel and a lot of the different programs, the need to help the less fortunate continues. One Red Deer-based pastor has been making a difference in the lives of African babies and their families. Brian Thompson is the International Director of Home Church based in Red Deer and is also the Director of Home of Hope. Pastor Brian, welcome to Bridge City News.
It's very good to be here. Thank you, Hal.
So what is Home of Hope all about?
15 years ago, God spoke to me that he wanted me to start helping children. And like you mentioned, I've been with Home Church in Red Deer here for over 40 years, and I was like a traveling evangelist. And I heard about the genocide in Rwanda. I don't follow news really good. I didn't know much about what happened with the genocide, but 15 years ago, I found out that Rwanda was the #1 nation in the world for needing orphan care and the #1 nation of children raising children. So I went over to Rwanda 15 years ago and just saw the most desperate children I've ever saw in my life. You can watch TV and watch a hockey game and you see the African children coming with the flies. I just used to flip the channel. But when you see children right with your own eyes, it changed my life and just caused me to do a major detour. I'm still with Home Church, and Home Church allowed me to start a Home of Hope as a charity under that covering. And we've been helping thousands of children ever since.
We'll talk about the impact on the lives of so many of those African kids in just a moment here. But let's talk about your book, Meant for More. Interesting read. Let's talk about the 4 people who basically started it all and about your transformation in regards to the book.
Yes, I love the title, Meant for More. Writing a book is a lot of hard work and we're going back and forth. But we decided on Meant for More because my life was meant for more. 15 years ago, when I saw those children, my life went to a whole new level. And I know the children that we met, they're meant for more. And it's also, the book is written for every Christian. You don't have to go to Africa. You don't have to help orphans or whatever, but God has more for you. So when I saw those first 4 children, I asked the pastor in Rwanda where I was speaking at a church, and I said, I asked him a stupid question. Do you happen to know any orphan children? He just laughed at me. We went walking down this dirt pathway. I was raised on a farm, so I was down this dirt pathway. We went to this mud hut, and we saw these 4 children huddled in this mud hut. Their father had just died 2 weeks before of HIV/AIDS, and their mother was in the hospital ready to die any day. And the hopelessness on those kids' eyes just changed my life. I just had to start helping, and we just simply bought some bags of rice and some food, and we left some money with the pastor to take care of those children.
Wow. So let's talk about some of that transformation. What really changed in your heart to leave the comfort of your home to minister to so many in Africa?
Well,
those kids are a good example, right? Those 4 kids.
Yeah. I was raised as a farm boy, and I was always proud that, you don't cry and you tough it up. But I saw those 4 kids, and we were there for 2 weeks, and we saw a lot more children. It just started with those 4. And I never teared up at all until on the way home. When I got on the airplane, I sat beside this lady. She said, "What brought you to Rwanda?" And I just started crying. And I'm sitting on this plane for 9 hours from Kigali to Amsterdam, and I'm just crying and crying and crying, and I didn't know what was happening to me. And my friend beside me was wondering, the flight attendants were wondering what was happening. And as I was just praying for those 9 hours, I just felt like God said to me in Romans 5:5, it says, He puts His love in our hearts by the Holy Spirit. And I felt like God was just rewiring me. And then I get home. My wife says, "How was your trip?" I start crying. Pastor Mel, my pastor, asked him, or he asked me how my trip was. I just started crying. And we just took pictures of 20 desperate kids and came home, and we started sponsoring 20 kids. And, I was a traveling evangelist, I guess, outside of our church. So I kept traveling to churches in Canada. And everywhere I went, I just asked, can I talk about children? And we just started sponsoring children. I had no goals, no plans, but it just kept mushrooming and growing and growing. So, and right from the start, I want to say I've never wanted to take 1 cent from any donations. God gave me a verse in Proverbs 28:27. It says, if you take care of the poor, I'll take care of you. And it's just kind of been a miracle journey ever since.
So, Pastor Brian, looking back to some of the earlier days, what really shocked you the most that you saw?
Well, when we started to go, when we flew, we always had to stop in Nairobi in those days because there was no direct flights into Kigali. So when we went to the layovers in Nairobi, we were shocked with the slums. There's 26 slums in Nairobi. And I had a friend that I had known many years before, just taking a mission trip. And he started telling me about these slums. And I went for a tour through the slums. And we just saw these people living in these dog sheds and
little shanties, right?
Little shanties, and sleeping on the floor, and the sewer running down the streets, and 700,000 people living in a slum. It's just worse than living on like a pig pen. And then while we were there, we started Home of Hope project in Kenya. And on the news one night, they were talking about how babies were thrown away live in plastic bags into the city dump. Nairobi has a 30-acre dump in the middle of the city. And people, because of, rape and incest or extreme poverty, they just throw their baby away. And that just, broke our heart. And we started hiring guards to walk through the dump looking for live babies. Just who had ever heard of such a thing? And sadly, I talk about this in the book, step by step how we did this, but guards would arrive and the babies were already dead because of animals that lived in the slums. And we prayed right in the slum saying, God, what can we do to beat the animals and rescue these babies? And I just got this picture of this great big billboard, and we put up 3 big billboards that says, please don't throw away your babies. Call this number. And we put up these 3 billboards at the entrances into the dump. And we've been averaging 15 calls every day of ladies that are in crisis, ready to throw away their babies. And thank God they're calling us before they throw away their baby. But we started something called the Dream Center with the permission of Matthew Barnett from Los Angeles, who founded the Dream Center. We got permission to use the Dream Center, and we just started rescuing these babies, hiring some caregivers, and buying some cribs. It was just those are the most horrific stories.
Wow,
how
that's
changed
powerful.
my heart. The first 4, then the kids thrown away in the garbage moved my heart to another level.
So those babies are found homes then? They're adopted out?
Well, we started, with the government process. They allowed us to rent a home, and we rescued 15 kids. And then we rented another house for 15 kids. And then at a conference here in Red Deer, we raised about $300,000, and we bought land and we built a 3-story building called the Dream Center. And it's a temporary area where kids can come back to health. A lot, we have an incubator. Most of the kids we rescued are malnourished. Some of the kids that were thrown away were just handicapped. One little boy, his name is Samuel Lucas. He can't hear and he can't talk. And it's like the parents didn't want him anymore and threw him away.
Wow.
Another girl this year was born without toes. And some people believe that if there's some defect in your body, then you're cursed, and they don't want a cursed child, so they discard them. So we have worked with the National Child Welfare of Kenya, and we are recognized as the #1 rescue center in Nairobi, and it's just thrilling. And we've met all the government regulations, and we are qualified to place children into foster families and into adoption now within Kenya. We don't adopt anywhere else in the world, just within Kenya. And some children, we are hoping that the mother will reconsider and want their children back. So we put those children into family units where there's like 6 children living together, sometimes with a pastor and his wife or a caregiver, and we're loving those kids, and we call them family units. So our goal is to rescue 50 children and place them every year, and it's really expanding and growing.
Well, that's beautiful, seeing you do God's work like that. Pastor Brian, can you give us an update on how the lives of the original 4 people has really changed?
In my book, we do a lot of before and after. So we have the picture of the first 4 children, and now 15 years, we're celebrating our 15th anniversary right now. We have those same four children. One of them's married. One of them is working with Home of Hope now, and the 2 others are still in school. And then the little boy, his name is Samuel, that was in the plastic bag, our first child rescued. He is now 14 years old, I think, and we got pictures through the book of him like 5 years old, 10 years old, and now as of the writing of the book, an updated picture. So a lot of before and after. We have 162 color pictures, and some of them relate to my life. You know, the subheading is called Discover the Next Chapter of Your Life. And, you know, when I was 48 years old, God had another chapter for me and launched this whole life-changing detour of his purpose. And then a lot of the pictures are before and after of how we've rescued kids. We have about 7 different ways we rescue children, but monthly sponsorship is the one that we're focused on the most.
So, Pastor Brian, did you see a real need to help bring other people on board to help teach young women how to be mothers, especially in Nairobi?
Yes, you know, we thank God we've literally had hundreds of people going with me on teams. In fact, there's 26 other contributors that have been on teams with me, and how they've gone over and sat in a rocking chair and hugged these orphans or these rescued children. And then we're always training. We have something in our church called Success Builders, and we're training people to make money for themselves. So even my next trip, I just booked my ticket to go back in November. I have a businessman from Penticton coming with me, and he's coming with the only purpose to help train teenagers, these rescued teenagers that are teenagers now, how they can make their own money, and just many, many hours over the 15 years of how to help women become self-sustaining. We've got food carts where the ladies are allowed to literally take a food cart out on the street, and they cook their food with a hibachi, a little barbecue, and sell it on the street. We have ladies in Congo that sell charcoal door to door, and these ladies can make $5, $10, and $15 a day and support their own family. So to me, the best way to help children who have a mother who can work, the best by far, is the invention of microloans. And we've used that very strongly for 15 years. In fact, today I was just online with Congo of how we can expand our microloan projects to help more women raise their own children.
So how helpful is it to really work with some of the local churches who have those contacts, especially in the slums, to reach people with the gospel of Christ?
You know, when we went 15 years ago, we had our home church was one church in 6 locations here in Alberta. And when I went as a, when Jesus saw people, he preached to them, he healed them, and then he fed them. So we believe the longest, best solution is to plant churches. And I've been involved planting 100 churches this last 15 years. And when we plant a church, then we help all the children, especially like in rural Kenya, rural Rwanda, rural Congo. Some kids walk 15 miles one way just to come to our feeding projects. We feed 4,000 children every weekend, a hot, healthy meal. So, just another way of helping children and, building some kind of relief that's going to work. So, yeah, planting churches. And then, many people have donated money to build a building. It's hard to feed children out in the grass or they'll just fight over the food. We get them into a building and we shut the door. We teach them about Jesus and then feed them. So we thank God for hundreds of sponsors who sponsor children and help buy land, help build churches, go teach, microloans, and it's just fun. More money comes in, we keep helping more and more people.
Amen. That's wonderful. Pastor Brian, if people want to pick up your book, Meant for More, or they want to get involved in the ministry, where should they go?
They can go to, I just typed on the screen there, homeofhope.ca. It has a link. And I'm so excited that it's now available on ebook for people that are out. We've got, I've been launching this book in Edmonton. I was just in Milk River this weekend. I'm in Stettler, then I'm going to Ponoka, then I'm coming to Penticton, Ontario. So I'm traveling to give out paper copies. And then my family and friends told me I had to read the audiobook. And I go, I don't want to read the audiobook. I'll tear up on the stories. And they say, you have to. So the audiobook on Audible through Amazon is also available. So Kindle and Kobo, ebooks, and or they can call and we can mail a book anywhere, especially in Canada. I'm not quite sure. Oh, we sent one book to the States as well. So the book just came out this month.
Pastor Brian Thompson is the director of Home of Hope. Thanks so much for joining us today from Red Deer, Alberta.
Thank you so much.
Alberta's United Conservative Party leadership race has 7 confirmed candidates running and will be choosing its new leader to replace Jason Kenney on October the 6th. Now, one of those candidates vying for the premier seat is Todd Lowen, an MLA from Northern Alberta. Welcome to Bridge City News, Todd. So great to have you on today.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Great. Okay, so tell us a bit about yourself and what it is that what fired you up to join this race to become the new leader of the UCP and the premier of Alberta? It's a big job.
Yes, it is a big job, but I've been looking forward to this opportunity to get into this leadership race. I'd never envisioned myself as running for premier in the past, but what we've seen in the last few years, I think, has left Albertans wanting a new direction, and I feel that there's a lot of Albertans that haven't been heard, and I feel that I can represent a lot of Albertans that have had those feelings, and it's an opportunity to get things back on track in Alberta, and I think Albertans are looking for something, and we have a good group of candidates that are running for leadership right now. And I believe that we'll be able to give those options to people to choose from. And again, looking forward to this leadership race, looking forward to being selected as the Premier of Alberta at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the UCP seems to be a very divided party. So what will it take to make the Conservatives united once again?
Well, I think we're already on track for that right now. We've had a divisive leader in the past, and he's leaving his post, and that's why we have the leadership race going on right now. So I think a lot of that has already started to come together. I believe that as we travel Alberta and engage Albertans, that will give us a chance for Albertans to feel like they've had been listened to and had a voice. When we look forward to the leadership race here, and I think there's an opportunity to bring Albertans together, and I think that we can bring this party back together and be able to represent Alberta going forward and into the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Todd, a big part of your campaign is obviously to put Alberta first, right? So, and I believe that certainly resonates with rural Albertans, especially now that the federal government says it wants to basically force farmers to reduce fertilizer use in order to meet its climate targets. So what's wrong with that approach? Would you approach that differently, and how would you respond to the Prime Minister about this as Premier?
Well, we have a real problem here in Canada. I think when we look at our dealings with Ottawa and Confederation, it's a broken system. We see Ottawa trying to interfere in the jurisdiction of Alberta and trying to push things on Albertans that Albertans just are not interested. And that's across the province. The latest, of course, is the fertilizer issue with the 30% reduction. We see the carbon tax. We see things where they've interfered with the tech mines and with property rights too. There's a lot of issues with our with our deal with Ottawa, and we've been really good at writing strongly worded letters that the Prime Minister has been able to crumple up and throw in the garbage, but we need to actually do something now. I think we need to start taking action immediately. And we've been kicking the can down the road. We've been having panels travel Alberta. We've been having reports drawn up, but we haven't been doing anything. And I think we need to start, and I will, as Premier, start immediately working towards some of the things that Albertans would like to see, which would, one of them would be our own pension plan that would save Albertans $3 to $4 billion a year, and our own Alberta Constitution.
Wow. Okay. So with that said, do you agree with the proposed Alberta Sovereignty Act?
The Sovereignty Act is basically saying no when Ottawa is infringing on our rights as Albertans. And so I agree that we need to be able to say no, but I would rather focus on working towards the things that we know we can do. We can look towards Quebec and see the things that they have already done, and we can work towards those things ourselves. Again, pension plan, employment insurance, collecting our own provincial taxes, provincial police force, all those things that we can do without having a constitutional crisis, without having a fight with Ottawa. But having those things would give us an opportunity to show Ottawa that we mean business, and that we can then be in a position of strength rather than weakness when we deal with them.
Okay, so as Premier, what's your opinion? Would MLAs be free to speak their mind, or should they maybe keep opposing opinions to themselves? How do you see it?
Well, MLAs are elected by their constituents to represent them, and I feel that they should be able to do that freely and openly, because that's how democracy works. In the past, we've seen that suppressed. And, I stuck up for my constituents. I represented my constituents when I wrote a letter to Jason Kenney over a year ago. And that's what I would bring forward. And I would be doing the same thing as Premier of Alberta as far as representing Albertans in that same way, as strong and as forward as possible.
Okay. Now, one of the biggest dividers in our province is how the COVID pandemic was and is being handled. And there are many different opinions on this, of course. So where do you stand on this? Would you impose lockdowns or vaccine mandates if another wave were to hit us?
No, I've opposed the vaccine mandates and the vaccine passports and things like that right from the start. It's proven that it hasn't worked, and we've also seen that the government's had to backtrack on all those things anyways. Albertans have a right to choose those things, and I think the handling of the pandemic was a serious issue that this government faced. And I understand that there were some tough decisions, and those were tough decisions. But again, over and over again, we've seen flip-flops. We've seen direction that wasn't that Albertans wouldn't agree with, and so we needed to work better on that and do better with that. But of course, when I look back to this government's term, the Albertans were losing faith in this government long before COVID even hit, and so that's the issue. A lot of it had to do with our dealings with Ottawa. So as much as COVID is an issue, there's other big issues that are going on in Alberta that have caused Albertans to lose trust in this government.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I understand that you would enact legislation to prevent compelled disclosure of vaccine status to third parties.
Yes, absolutely. Nobody should have to disclose their private health information to anybody. When we go into a business, I don't know where we got to the point where we would have to disclose our personal health information to private individuals in a private business. And I think it puts those businesses in a bad situation too, where they're there to collect information that's private and shouldn't be disseminated in any way. So again, we shouldn't be in that position at all. And again, putting those businesses in that position, I think, is a very very dangerous place.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Of course, affordability is one of your key campaign issues, and with soaring inflation continuing, I mean, we're all feeling it right now at the grocery store, at the gas tank, you name it. So what would you do to make life more affordable for Albertans?
Well, I think one thing we can do is we can be reducing personal income taxes for the middle class, and I would like to see a reduction in the small business tax too, going from 2% down to 0. Our small businesses have really suffered. The individuals that have, some of them just themselves as an employee, or maybe a dozen employees, they've suffered a lot through the last 2 years, and I believe they need a break. But when we look at all the other issues that we have going on in Alberta, we have enormous debt. We have $112 billion of debt, and paying $2.7 billion a year in interest. And as interest rates rise, we'll have more and more issues with that. And those are things that that take away the money that can be used to pay for the services that we need, that Albertans expect.
Okay, now Todd, the Alberta oil and gas industry often gets labeled as a dirty oil villain, and it seems to be targeted again and again by federal regulations designed to create that uphill battle for the energy sector. So is this something that you would like to see changed?
Yeah, obviously we have the cleanest and most efficient. We have good safety records. We have good human rights records, obviously, in Alberta and Canada. And our oil and gas should be used throughout the world to displace some of the oil, the true dirty oil, and the oil that from dictatorships and countries that don't have good human rights records. When we look at what's happening in Europe right now, and we see Europe held hostage by some of these countries that we could be shipping oil to replace some of that. We see that there's a lot of issues there. We need to be able to have access to the markets, and we've been restricted by some of the federal government regulations, and that needs to stop. We live in this country together. We need to have access to those markets. It seems like the Eastern Canada sure would like to have the revenue from our oil and gas sector, but they're not interested in seeing pipelines come across. But we need to be able to push back on that and make that happen. Again, we need to have a stronger position in Confederation than we have right now, and we need to start taking action on that immediately.
Mm-hmm. So what can be done to change this and maybe even bring jobs back to our province?
Well, again, I think we need to have a stronger negotiating position with Ottawa when it comes to some of that pushback. Again, we have international pressures too, and I understand that too. But again, when we look at the other jurisdictions that are producing oil, we do have a very clean, environmentally clean oil, and we have the standards here that are second to none, and we're getting better all the time too. It's not like we're standing back on our laurels and just puffing up our chests and talking about how good we are. We continue to do better all the time, and that's something I think that should be recognized around the world. And we haven't probably done as good a job as we could as far as making that known, but we need to work towards that. And again, we need to hold the federal government to account when they start restricting our opportunity for our province to get our products to market.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about healthcare for a moment. Lots to talk about here. So we all know about the doctor shortage in Alberta. My own doctor is leaving the province. So what needs to change to increase physician availability?
Well, we see that especially in rural Alberta, but I'm sure it's a concern sometimes in the cities too, as far as the shortage of doctors. Rural Alberta, we see emergency rooms closing down all the time. And this has been an ongoing problem, but I think it's actually gotten worse. And what I would like to see is we have a post-secondary education system here in Alberta that I don't believe is graduating as many people as we need to serve our needs as a society, because we end up actually importing doctors from all over the world. And don't get me wrong, myself, I don't know if I've ever had an Alberta educated doctor as a family doctor. So we love our doctors that have come out from outside the country. They're doing a great job for us. But again, we have a post-secondary education system that's subsidized heavily by the Alberta taxpayer, and it's not providing the educated people that we need. And I think that's a serious problem. Another problem we have is when our students can't get into our colleges and universities here in Alberta, they sometimes either choose not to go into that field, or they go elsewhere in the world to get their education. And then the process to come back is convoluted, time consuming, and restricts their opportunity to get back to Alberta and actually come back to work and serve Albertans. So a lot of them end up going elsewhere in the world again. And so there's several issues there, but I believe we can fix this problem. We have plenty of intelligent people here in Alberta that could provide our healthcare needs. We just have to allow them the opportunity to do it.
Okay, what about decreasing wait times and increasing hospital bed capacity?
Yeah, for sure. When we look at the system that we have right now, where we're spending compared to other jurisdictions near the top of the pack, and what we're getting for services is at near the bottom of the pack. We have to clean up the inefficiencies in the system. It isn't about how much money we spend, it's how we spend the money that we are spending. And there's no excuse to be waiting 2-3 years for hip and knee surgeries, waiting months and months for an MRI, and waiting hours for ambulances. We're spending money and we're not getting the services that we need. I see that we need a severe overhaul of the AHS. That's a system that we brought ourselves to a centralized system when we previously had the regional system. And I think that's proven to been a failure because we haven't seen an improvement in services. We haven't seen a reduction in costs. So we need to go back, I believe, to a regional decision-making process and have that overhaul of AHS so that we can start getting what we deserve as far as results for the money we pay.
Okay, and Todd, why should UCP members vote for you? What makes you different or stand out from the other candidates?
Well, myself, I consider myself just a regular guy. I'm not a smooth-talking politician. I'm just here to serve Albertans, and I've stood up for my constituents in the past, and I paid a price for that when I asked Jason Kenney to resign and I was removed from caucus. And I plan to take that same strength and that same intestinal fortitude to represent Albertans and do that. So I believe I have something to offer to Albertans, and again, it's when we look at this process, members of the party will make a decision. October 6th, we will have a new premier, and I hope Albertans and party members will choose me.
And I'm just curious with the latest polls coming out showing that Danielle Smith, Travis Taves, and Brian Jean sort of in the lead right now. If anything ever kind of push came to shove, would you consider dropping out and putting your support behind any of those candidates, or are you going to stay in this till the end?
No, I plan to stay in here right to the end. I think there's the polls are always interesting, of course, especially when polling is done outside of the membership, and only the membership of the party will be able to vote. So I think those polls it may be a little deceiving off the top, and I think I'm doing fairly well as far as the campaign is concerned. And again, we have a long ways to go and lots of work to do, but I'm looking forward to it. And I've been traveling across Alberta. I think since the campaign started, I put about 25,000 kilometers on my truck, and I'll continue doing that and covering the ground across Alberta from one end to the other.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today, Todd. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Todd Loewen is a candidate in the UCP leadership race. The party will be choosing its new leader on October the 6th. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.